Recording.
Okay, hi there everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brandon Elston. I'm joined by my colleague Joseph Shones here, and we're going to be going through the Google and paid social ad products and some strategy updates for what we're seeing coming down the pipeline from a couple different platforms and some strategies to help optimize around that. We'd ask that you guys make sure you mute your microphones during the presentation. We'll also have a Q&A section afterwards, so if you have any questions for us about anything presented today or anything related to Google or paid social, we'll be happy to answer those for you at the end, okay? Thank you very much. Perfect, and I'll pass it off to Joseph to introduce what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, we're going to start off with some Google overview, some campaign options for using Google. Then we'll be moving over to some Meta, which is used formerly Facebook. Overall, some best practices for each, some key summaries and takeaways for you to go home with, and then the Q&A that Brandon had just mentioned. So let's start off by going over some really fun facts about Google. Google is the most widely used and highest result producing platform in the digital marketing world. With several different types of ads being run across multiple networks, Google is able to reach a very wide audience. The most common ad types are search and display, and we'll dive into some best practices on how to use each one soon. And the reason why Google is so successful at driving results is because it works in all areas of business, from business to consumer, business to business, e-commerce. Google can do it all. Going to Google search. Search ads are the most common and most likely familiar to use ad formats on Google, and Google is always trying to find ways to improve. Starting in July of this year, the expanded text ad format will no longer be able to be edited or created, and Google will be favoring the responsive search ad format. Responsive search ads have grown in momentum over the last couple of years, and they use machine learning to create the ads that appear in the search results. The advertiser creates up to 15 headlines and up to 4 descriptions, and based on what Google determines to be the most relevant content to the user searching, they'll use those components to customize the ad that it thinks will be the most effective for the user. It's basically like giving Google the pieces of the puzzle, and it puts the puzzle together for you. So according to Google, advertisers that these responsive ads over extended text ads, we can see about a 7% increase in conversions at a similar cost per conversion. And some best practices for these responsive search ads. To make the most effective use of them, it is recommended to include as many keywords as possible in the 30-character limitation of those headlines. If using a large keyword list, dynamic keyword insertion can do this for you. So skipping a step, if you don't really quite know what to include, Google will use machine learning to include those. And while Google does choose, what headlines, the advertiser is able to control where certain headlines do appear by pinning them in certain locations in the ad format. This allows you to still let the ads be customized based on the user search interest, but still ensuring that specific information is seen in the headlines and descriptions, as there are certain details that you want to make sure are always present. And when testing new headlines, it is important It's important to run experiments to review which combination generates the best click rate, but also the greatest conversion rate. Google does prioritize the ad delivery based on keyword selection, keywords included in the ad copy, and their overall relevancy to the landing page. Google's primary goal is to create the best end user experience for the user, and it does reward advertisers who create strong, relevant ads. All right, so similar to search, Google's display ads also have a responsive format, and that's become much more widely used, and it is recommended. Responsive display ads allow up to 5 headlines and 5 descriptions that Google will rotate through to deliver the most relevant ad copy to the user. But along with those headlines, it does allow up to 20 images to be mixed and matched in the rotation. The ad performance is rated on low, good, and best, providing valuable information on which combination of assets resonates best with the user audience, and it also simplifies A/B testing. It takes that step out of the equation for you by telling you which one is low and goods being focused on improving the number of goods. So responsive ads are not a substitute for static image ads. Static ads, they still allow a lot of customization, but they also allow much greater control over the exact ad's appearance. And all display ad formats are best used for remarketing purposes and driving awareness, retargeting to custom audience lists, as well as previous website visitors. Display ads also have unique targeting features and affinity audiences, allowing the ads to drive awareness to users visiting websites with similar content, as well as those who are researching related information. All right, Performance Max is the newest addition to Google's family of ads. It is a goal-based campaign that allows the advertiser to reach all Google channels in a single campaign. It combines elements of Google Search, YouTube Display, Discover, Gmail, and Maps to find the users most likely to convert no matter where they are. So the advertisers provide the images, the ad copy, they provide the daily budget, the targeted areas they want their ads to be seen, preferred URLs, if any, and whatever other elements they'd like to include in their ads. Then Google's machine learning will match them all together to give the customers wherever they are. The best use Performance Max campaign, it is important to know that the ads feed off of automation and signals. The more conversions an account has received previously, the easier it is for the Performance Max campaign to connect with the right audience. So basically, in short, the Performance Max campaign is not the ideal format for a beginner advertiser, rather a way for existing advertisers to help grow their conversion rates within their existing audience. Okay, customer match lists. Customer match lists are lists of current customers that can be uploaded to Google as an audience that you're able to target your ads to. Google has announced the ability to use those lists for smart bidding, which will give Google more signals to use in the automation of its ad delivery, helping to guarantee the right ads are seen in front of the right audience. And this is still in the rollout phase. It's scheduled to roll out at different times for each campaign type. Video, Q2 of this year, so currently rolling out. Discovery in Q3 of this year. Performance Max, search, and shopping campaigns are set to roll out in Q4. And moving on to Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a free tool that allows the user to see how visitors spend time on their site, how they arrive there, how much time they spent on each page, and where sales are coming from, either from paid or organic traffic. And this is done by placing a snippet code onto the website that collects visitor data that can be used for remarketing purposes. And Analytics also tells you which keywords drove visitors to the site and provides details on if that is a high-value keyword or if it should not be used. And if you're running any sort of digital marketing campaign, Analytics is vital to use to evaluate the success and profitability of your marketing endeavors. Then I'm going to pass on over to Brennan as we dive into Meta.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Joseph. An extra note on Google Analytics, we also did a webinar on GA4 a couple months ago. So if you have any questions or are looking for more information or a deeper dive on Google Analytics, highly recommend checking that out. You can find that over on our YouTube page. Perfect. So starting off with Meta, if you're not familiar with Meta or don't know kind of the new terminology, Meta is essentially the parent company of Facebook. So Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp are all housed under Meta. So if you hear us referring to Meta, that's what we're talking about. So Meta ads, Facebook, Instagram ads are a great way to get in front of your target audience, but they may not be quite as great of a converter as Google search ads. So where Google search ads create more of a pull as people are conducting those searches on what they're interested in or what they're looking to buy or research. Meta ads are more of a push method. So you're showing your ads to users before they even know they're interested in your product, creating more awareness and driving more traffic over to your website. So the four main types of ads you'll see on the platform are image-based ads, video ads, carousel ads, and story ads. Image ads are the most pronounced on the platform just because the ease of creating those. One thing to be sure of is using the correct image size when creating those, just because if you have the wrong image size, they may crop it or zoom in or do different things and your ad may not appear as you'd like it to. So that's a big key point when looking at image ads on the platform. Video ads are one of the key ad formats we recommend to advertisers. If you have the ability to create video assets, we typically see higher conversion rates and better engagement on video ads. especially if on Instagram specifically, as you're scrolling through. It's a really highly visual platform, and having that little bit of movement from a video ad can create a thumb-stopping moment. And typically, a video ad takes almost twice as long as a static image ad to process, and so people will slow down and be sure to pay more attention to those video ads over maybe a static image. Next, we have carousel ads. These are the ad types where you can have multiple images that people can swipe through. You can also include video there. So carousel ads are really great for highlighting multiple different types of products in a single ad that people can go through and shop and swipe through. So that's typically when we'd recommend those if you're highlighting multiple products or features in an ad. And then story ads, again, is just another placement. You know, they typically have lower CPMs, may not be as engaged of an audience, but it's also a little bit harder to make those assets because it is an additional size. So some brands see value there and get their impressions out at a lower cost per impression. So these are the ad specs and examples over here of like a story ad, a carousel ad, and a feed ad. For feed ads, there's two sizes you can do on Facebook. Instagram takes a 1200 by 1200 or 1-to-1. We typically recommend and see better results with the 1200 by 1200. Reason being is as the internet's developed and more people are shifting away from computers to browsing on their mobile devices, that square image takes up more surface area on a mobile device. And so therefore you're showing, you have more real estate of your ad on those devices as opposed to a 1200 by 628 where it's more rectangular. So those are kind of the image specs we recommend for feed ads. For video ads, we're going to recommend a minute or less. 30 seconds is ideal. We find that amount of time has the best click-through rate, best engagement over a 15-second or a full minute. So it's short enough to where you're focusing in and getting all the information in that you need to and not losing users, but also long enough to where you can tell a story or highlight product features or whatever you're trying to do there. Video ads, again, are going to be a square image, but you can also do the same dimensions as a story to create a reel. Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, is really pushing heavy for short-form video in order to compete with other platforms like TikTok. And so that's a new ad type that's available on the platform. And if you have the assets to run ads with that size, definitely recommend testing it out, as they're definitely putting a lot of focus and attention behind those platforms, and they want to see it succeed. Perfect. Now going on to some different image aspects when creating ads. First off, we want to try whenever possible to include images with people. They typically perform better if someone can imagine themselves using the service you're trying to sell, or the products you're trying to sell. It can create an in-funnel desire for those products. And so instead of like an interest or awareness where you're just highlighting the product, if someone can actually, for example, over on the right, see themselves using those yoga outfits, doing the yoga on a beach, or seeing themselves succeed in business with Uber conference here on the left, those are things that are going to drive more bottom funnel actions from users as they can see themselves using it. Another thing is stay away from stock imagery whenever possible. Sometimes as people are scrolling through, it takes just even less than a second for them to look at an ad. And by having something like stock image, for example, this image here on the left, they may not right off the bat understand what they're looking at, what the ad's about. And so by having custom images that clearly depict the product or service you're advertising, you're more likely to get better engagement with the ads, and people will recognize what you're advertising. The next thing we want to do is keep the images in the correct dimensions. As I'd mentioned earlier, we want to make sure you're not getting zoomed in or cropped. You don't want your message to be cut off, and so using those correct dimensions whenever possible is best practice. And then also use images that have a focal point rather than a busy background. So each of these images focus on a person or a product. Sometimes if it's too busy, if your image is full of products, it gets washed out and people aren't really likely to engage with that. Also, lastly, using diverse images with multiple genders and ethnicities, we're also seeing perform well. Perfect. So those are the main advertising types. These are some additional options we have here that are available on Meta as a platform that are a little bit yet less used and we recommend in certain case scenarios. So the first one's going to be dynamic creative. That's going to be kind of the equivalent of Google's responsive display ads. And so what you'll do is you'll upload all of your different assets, images, video, as well as different call to actions and ad text. And then Meta will go through and pair all of those and serve them to the audience that it'll resonate best with. The only drawback to these is that they are not, the report's aggregated for performance, and so it doesn't give you specific details on which image performed best or which call to action. It's really about creating the highest amount of performance. So it's definitely by no means a substitute for A/B testing your creative, but if you have a bunch of assets you're looking to push out there quickly and to get the best performance, dynamic creative can definitely be a great option for you. Another ad type is collection ads. So these are going to be specific to e-commerce clients. And what you'll do is you'll upload an image or a video, and then you'll use your product catalog uploaded to Meta, and it can pull in product images. And when someone clicks on those ads, it opens a full screen instant experience where it's kind of like an online store. People can scroll through your different products right in the platform and shop straight from it. So it's really great. You don't have to go through the whole process of building a landing page, for example, for some of your sales that may be a limited time. This is a great option for that. And it also keeps it in the platform. So there's less barriers to entry, less things people are having to click on, and therefore you may see a higher conversion rate there, as opposed to directing someone to a website. Similar to like a lead gen form, it's less barriers to end up converting. And then the last option we have is maybe an additional option is ad sequencing. This is available for the reach and frequency buying option. So very limited in what objectives you can do around awareness and traffic essentially. So nothing in the conversion realm, but it's really great option for if you're introducing a new product or trying to gain brand awareness. What this type of ad does is it allows you to select which ads you'd like to show to users in a certain order. So for instance, if you're introducing a new product, you may have an ad describing that product, and then you may have 4 ads following that up, talking about the different features of your product. So maybe a sleek design, or maybe a performance enhancement you have there, and then another ad wrapping up about that product. So it really allows you to tell a story about a product or brand, and helps really gain awareness as opposed to showing the same ad with a high amount of frequency and kind of washing it out. So it really allows you to tell a story, which is fantastic. And then we're going on to the targeting options. So there's a lot of options when it comes to targeting in Meta. Interest targeting has long been kind of the king of the platform. So it goes through and you can choose different interests that Meta finds on platform as well as off platform with websites that use the Meta pixel. It can tell what people are interested in. Obviously, with the introduction of iOS 14.5, some of the performance with interest targeting has gone down. It's made it a little bit more difficult to track things like conversions, like interest targeting. So you see a lot more people shifting towards demographic audiences, going after key buyer personas, as well as first-party data. So really harnessing the power of repeat customers and using that to advertise on the platform or create lookalike audiences on the platform. But going through these, obviously we have demographic targeting, so making sure you're targeting specific locations. And there are settings in there for targeting locations and people interested in locations or recently in, so it's important to differentiate those there. You can also engage with people that are currently following your page that you may not have their information in a CRM yet for, but they are following your page to show ads to, as well as retargeting through the Meta pixel and customer list from your CRM, as mentioned before. And so just kind of wrap this up for Meta, again, we want to recommend that you update your ads monthly, if not quarterly, just to create fresh ads in there depending on your budget and what the frequency is looking like. We want to stay away from stock imagery and use kind of unique images that include people. Be sure you're testing different ad formats and messaging to get the best performance, as well as make sure you're connecting with your customers with the right message by going after specific target audiences and using first-party data. Joseph, I'll pass it off for the Google wrap-up.
All right, some key takeaways from Google. The Google search ads places ads directly in front of users actually searching for your products and services. Display ads offer some customizable ads. They're best used for branding and spreading awareness. Google Analytics provides some specific details on how users interact with your website after clicking on your ads. And by regularly reviewing your campaign performance along with the collected analytics data, it will help you understand what campaign format is best for your goals and help you ensure that relevant traffic is being directed to your website.
Perfect. We'll open this up to questions now. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And Joseph, this would probably be a good time to talk about our upcoming webinar also for next month.
Oh, next month, so on the second Wednesday of each month, our webinar will be for local SEO.
Perfect. So this will pair nicely. We're talking about paid this week or month, and then next month we'll talk about SEO. So be able to match those up will be great. Perfect. I don't see very many messages coming through, but Joseph, one question I know I've had clients ask is a lot of clients are looking at Performance Max as this new campaign type, and there's a lot of interest around it. So what type of clients would you say maybe might be best suited for Performance Max? Maybe like a bigger versus smaller client, or kind of where do you see, when would you recommend Performance Max?
I think like the best use of Performance Max would be someone that already has a such e-commerce website, someone familiar with the Merchant Center, someone that has a such YouTube channel with a good number of followers, that we're getting the maximum exposure from every possible platform that people could be using. Wouldn't really make much sense to be a small channel or a private channel or an e-commerce site that only has about 5 individual products. It'd be better for someone who has a wide variety of options for people to choose from.
Okay, perfect. So kind of like you mentioned earlier, not for the new advertisers,
exactly.
Small businesses. Got it.
If you're just starting out and you see, oh, I want to get my maximum exposure for my very first campaign, since it does pull a lot from existing data feeds, it won't yield much result.
Got it. Perfect. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through. So if you have any, feel free. Oh, maybe one came through.
Do you think adding interest is a good idea?
I think adding interest. So adding interest to meta targeting. So the question is, do we think adding interest is a good idea on Facebook? So I still think adding interest targeting is good on Facebook. What you could do is you could kind of create a funnel, if you will, where you're targeting, if you have like a cold audience or you're trying to reach new users, targeting with interest targeting, and then re-engaging with people that clicked on those ads in a retargeting method. So it shows people that have been interested before, you're following up with them, I think would be the best way to do it. So even though you're losing out on some of the data with iOS 14.5, it's still a really good way to reach users that may not be familiar with your brand and targeting that way. There's also another option where you can target users on display with interest targeting for Google and setting up custom audiences based on websites people are visiting, as well as search terms they're doing in Google. And by doing that, you typically can target them with display ads at a lower cost per click than what would be in search. So that's another option when you're looking at interest targeting for display. If maybe like Facebook is dried out a little bit, or maybe you're seeing higher CPMs where it's not as cost effective, potentially trying interest targeting with display is another option for creating that kind of push marketing. Great question. Perfect. So another question came in, 15-second video ads or 30-second, which one do we think is more effective? So great question. When looking at the data for Facebook, Instagram, 30 seconds does win out on engagement and retention. So it is a little bit better than the 15-second. The only caveat I would have to that is if this is for YouTube. YouTube does have the separate ad formats where if it's 15 seconds or a 6-second bumper ad, you can upload that as non-skippable. So if you're running a 30-second ad and they're having low view-through rates, that could obviously tell you some things about your creative, but you might also want to test the 15-second non-skippable. Joseph, what do you think about kind of the different video times being 15-second, 30-second, maybe a minute?
I think it really depends on what the message is, how capturing the the creative is and where it's being placed. If it's one of those videos on YouTube that you have to wait the 5 seconds and skip through, it's like the shorter the video is, the more like concise, condensed, and fast the message is, the more retention you'll get. Where if it's on you try to go for the full 15 seconds, 30 seconds, I just don't think there's enough time to really deliver the message, and people are just frantically waiting for those 5 seconds to skip the video.
Yeah. The follow-up to that is if it makes a difference from a cost perspective as the video gets longer. I don't think it really makes that big of a difference. If it is on YouTube and you're running a non-skippable versus skippable ad, you will have higher cost per views with the non-skippable. But on a platform like Facebook, having a 15 versus a 30-second ad, I don't think will make much of a difference when it comes to the cost there. We got a lot of good questions about the video side of things, so I'll have to note that down for a future webinar. We also have a best practices when it comes to video blog, so you might want to go check that out as well on the Anvil website. If you have any other questions about video, I'd highly recommend checking that one out. Perfect, awesome. Well, I think that's everything we have here. If you have any follow-up questions, be sure to go to the Anvil website, send in a contact us with any additional questions that you have from the webinar. We'll also be uploading this to the YouTube, so you can go back and review any of the slides you've seen here today if you want to go back and look at maybe some of the Facebook specs or maybe some of the information Joseph covered with Performance Max and the customer match list. But we really appreciate you all attending today, and hope you have a great rest of your week.